treatable. Really, it's treatable. Yes, it's treatable. It's the Treatable Podcast. Say what's on your mind. It's the Treatable Podcast. Real, coming, treatable. It's the Treatable Podcast. It's all on the Treatable Podcast.
Many men feel like the rulebook for relationships is being rewritten. Maybe you feel like you can't do anything right, or maybe it feels like there's this invisible glass wall between you and your partner, and nothing you say ever really makes it through. If that's you, I've got good news. The rulebook has been rewritten, but it's going to help you have happier, healthier, more loving relationships than ever before. It's time for men to turn the page on toxic masculinity and learn how to play the game of love to win. Welcome to Treatable, the podcast that explores mental health challenges with experts who show us that change is possible. I'm your host, Clint Malley, and in this episode, we're going to talk about how men can create healthier relationships with their partners using the strong model of relational therapy. Helping us unpack this therapeutic model is the brilliant mind behind its creation, Kristal DeSantis. Kristal is a licensed marriage and family therapist based in Austin, Texas, known for her expertise in relationships, trauma work, and sex therapy. Her development of the strong model of relational therapy, which blends trauma-informed and attachment-based methods, has earned her a reputation as a leading authority on the subject. She even wrote a book about it. It's called Strong, a Relationship Field Guide for the Modern Man.
Treatable Podcast. It's all on the Treatable Podcast.
Kristal, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, we've written a book about men and their relationships with other human beings. What made you interested in tackling it from a male perspective?
Honestly, it came from a place of wanting to balance the field a little bit. Obviously, I'm a female therapist, and one of the things I noticed was that a lot of therapists are predominantly women, and a lot of consumers of therapeutic products, self-help products, tend to be women. And so that's where I noticed a lot of the resources were focused towards women's issues. And so I just wanted to balance the field out a little bit, give the men some resources so that they can also have a fighting chance when it comes to having healthy relationships, good mental health, and everything that makes life fulfilling.
Yeah, there's a huge need. There's a huge need that you've identified, especially when it comes to, I don't know what this person wants from me. How do I have a good relationship with this person? There's a lot of confusion from the male perspective. There's a lot of frustration from the female or male perspective, whether it's heteronormative or a gay relationship. And so when we think about these dynamics, we have a framework from you. It's STRONG, right? Strong. And it's a cool way to be able to understand and to walk through these relationships and to figure out, okay, how do I create a relationship that's healthy, that's thriving, that's regenerative? And so that's what we're going to unpack here today. So let's start with the first part, the S of strong, which stands for safety. Can you walk us through what does it mean to have safety in a relationship, and why is that the first thing you want to start with?
The reason why I want to start with safety is because as a trauma therapist, establishing a foundation of safety is the number one step in any healthy, safe relationship. And also in thinking about male psychology, often men just want to keep their partners safe, right? I have a prologue in the book that talks about the evolutionary, societal, even ways of men inhabiting their masculinity. And one of the pillars of that is the idea that they are protectors. And so the urge to embody safety as a man for your family, I've seen a lot of men just have that instinct of, I want to keep my family safe. I want to keep my partner safe. How do I do that in a modern way where it's not simply about just hitting the gym or, having the latest, home security system? And so that's really why I wanted to start with safety. This is an instinct that is healthy, and it's also from a trauma-informed perspective and an attachment-based perspective, having that safety is a really essential element.
When we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have, of course, the things like food and water and shelter and clothing and all of those things. But the often overlooked one of that is safety. I cannot do anything if I do not feel safe. I cannot work on my mental health. I can't be in relationships. If I don't feel safe, then I'm not going to be able to work on myself in general. And so you actually break safety down into 4 different domains. The first one being self-awareness. Can you unpack how does self-awareness play into safety?
When you are aware of your impact on your environment, you can make a huge difference in the safety or lack thereof in your relationship. Because one of the things I saw often is when sometimes men were not aware of their impact in the relationship, it impacted the safety of the dynamic. And so having that self-awareness of, oh, when I'm upset and I slam a door, it makes my partner feel unsafe, even if I don't mean it that way. When I get upset and I raise my voice, my partner might have a physical reaction to that, she shuts down. Again, it's not what I mean to do. I don't mean to be aggressive or have this unsafe energy, but I can have self-awareness that that's how it might present in the relationship if I'm not aware. And then also just the self-awareness piece of knowing who you are and what your needs are before entering into a relationship automatically will help set that relationship up for success. Don't wait to find yourself in your relationship, right? Treat yourself like a priority by having some self-awareness, knowing what you need, knowing what you're looking for, who you're looking for in a partnership before you enter into a relationship. Like I'm a big fan of efficiency. Like let's not all learn the hard way, friends. Like starting with some self-awareness gives you a little bit of a map to who you're looking for.
Yeah, so there's 2 sides to self-awareness. One is being able to understand impact over intention, understanding that the things that I do, the things that I say may carry an impact that's actually different than what I meant to convey, what I meant to communicate. And self-awareness is being aware of that process. And then the second side is understanding your needs, because how are you supposed to be able to have a positive relationship if you don't even know what you want, right? So needs are an important part, and it comes with both self-awareness of intention versus impact, but also your needs coming into a relationship. Love it. That makes sense. The second part of safety is stability, which kind of makes sense. How do you unpack stability for folks in a relationship?
Yeah. So the way I talk about stability in a relationship is in kind of a really practical sense of, are you able to keep your home fires burning when your partner is unable to? Right. And so, especially in a heterosexual relationship, what I've seen in working with couples is often the women feel like they cannot rely on their male partners to keep the home fires burning if they go down. So I've heard women say, like, I'll be sick or I'll need a vacation. And my husband will say, no, don't leave me with the kids. Right. Or they'll have to call for help. And that's honestly, there's lots of articles and lots of research around this, but not only is it, I think, demeaning to men to be like, you're a babysitter of your own child, like you're so helpless that you need your mom to come help you for a weekend when your wife's out of town. Like, how infantilizing is that, first of all? If you can run a company, I guarantee you can figure out where your children go to school, right? And what they eat. And then on the other hand, it also leads to a lot of contempt in relationships, which eventually erodes respect. It erodes sexual attraction. And so, again, just kind of that basic, as a man, as an adult, as a human, do you know how to keep a household running? Can you be a safe, stable presence in your home, or are you one more chore? Are you one more burden? So let's just have some awareness around that and how much that impacts the safety of the relationship.
That's such a great way to describe it, keeping the fire burning even when the other partner is away. And if you think about it as far as reciprocity, you would want the same, right? Should you have to be sick or injured or whatever, you would want to know that your life as a couple is not going to fall apart because you guys take care of each other, you lean on each other. And oftentimes I could see how this could be a challenge when people have gender roles in their mind about what a man should do, what a man shouldn't do. And they think about divvying up chores or divvying up things, but it's completely based on the relationship. Isn't that right? Like, different partners might have different types of things that they do. Have you seen that in your work?
Absolutely. And I think the main thing when it comes to stability, and I know this, maybe some people will recognize this phrase, but it's kind of in the therapeutic space, is not an uncommon saying, is don't let roommate issues become relationship issues, right? As an adult in a relationship that's healthy, making sure that the stumbling block doesn't become the dishes and the chores. Like as adults who are invested in a home together, y'all figure it out. But you have to at least have the same level of capability or know what your strengths are, right? And that also goes for, which I put in my book, recognizing when you might be attracted to a partner who doesn't also have that level of stability, right? Like maybe the person that you're really attracted to is super fun and really exciting, but every time you see them, they're in some kind of problem, like their car is broken down, they got repossessed, they got kicked out of their home, they've been arrested for drinking in the streets again. Like certain things are going to derail the safety of your relationship. So again, when you have those skills of stability, you can also more readily recognize the presence or the lack of them in a partner.
That's true. I wouldn't even know what to look for if I didn't first identify those needs as being important in myself, which goes back to your first point of self-awareness. The third part of safety comes down to self-regulation. This is a key therapeutic term. We hear this all the time when people talk about, oh, they are dysregulated. Can you unpack self-regulation? Why is that important as it relates to safety in a relationship?
Because at the end of the day, we're just, what is the saying? Bags of meat with, electrical pulse. And so basically, our bodies are very, very attuned to when somebody else is dysregulated. Even though logically we might be wanting to understand our partner, if our bodies are activated, we're not in a place to hear them. And so this is something that I've really emphasized with couples is, so many people come to therapy with conflict and communication issues. And this is really actually the 3 and 4 parts of the safety, the self-regulation and self-expression. Is if you don't know how to regulate your body, you're going to have conflict that comes out of nowhere. You're talking about what are we going to do this weekend? Next thing you know, you're in a huge fight and you don't know how you got there. Often it's because your bodies were dysregulated. You didn't recognize it. You didn't know how to soothe it. You didn't know how to co-regulate. And it just escalated into a conflict. So that's why self-regulation is so important. When you know, ooh, I'm getting a little activated. I need to take a break. I need to take a breath. I need to step away from this conversation. But doing that in such a way that you don't then trigger your partner into a dysregulated state is a really important skill in a healthy relationship.
This episode of Treatable is brought to you by Sandstone Care, which helps teens, young adults, and their families overcome challenges with mental health, substance use, and addiction. They provide age-specific, individualized treatment plans centered around your unique situation and goals, and they only use evidence-based therapies to help you get there. They keep their group therapy sizes small so folks can connect with others going through the same struggle and so that you never feel alone. They also give academic and vocational support to help you improve your grades or to get started on your career path. And lastly, because they know that mental health and substance use affect the people closest to us, they provide support for the whole family through their family therapy program. To learn more about teen and young adult treatment options, go to sandstonecare.com. Change is possible, and Sandstone Care is here to help. Yeah, and we have mirror neurons, right? That they connect with other folks, and when we see their facial expression, we can feel when they're short on breath or they're hyperventilating or an increased heart rate. Our bodies are designed to be able to pick up these cues, even these micro expressions, especially within the people who, first, it's our caretakers. We notice this within our caretakers, and it helps us to understand how we regulate our own body. So when I'm a baby, I look at my mom, and if my mom's happy, I can say, okay, things are going to be all right. And when her heartbeat is calm, then I can calm down. And when her breathing is calm, then I can match the pace with her breathing. And we do this and we learn self-regulation from our caretakers. It's part of our attachment style. Any trauma-informed care person will be able to unpack that. And if you want to know more about attachment styles, see our previous episode on trauma-informed care because we unpack the 4 different attachment styles in there. But in conjunction with that self-regulation, it also turns how we self-express. The words that we use are going to be very different when we are in a calm state rather than when we are in a fight or flight state. The actions that we do, we're not going to be slamming doors. We're not going to be showing all the, hey, bros, listen out there, men, the toxic masculinity thing about slamming your fist on the table and, smashing a dish. That's not cute. Nobody loves that. It doesn't make anybody feel safe. It doesn't make anybody feel like they're being heard. It doesn't make anybody feel like they want to open up. And so that self-regulation is the predecessor towards self-expression. And as you mentioned, this is the third and fourth part of safety. Is that right?
Yes. And they're kind of, like you said, they kind of are part and parcel of the same thing, or two sides of the same coin, because really, even the slamming of the fist, and it's never a healthy behavior in a relationship. But as a therapist, what I hear in that is there's a message that's getting lost in the delivery. I know that you have something to say, you want to send a message, but maybe the message that you're sending is not the one that you really want your partner to hear. Right. So slamming your fist, stomping, throwing a table over, maybe the message that you're trying to send is, I need to be heard. But that's not what your partner experiences. They experience, oh my God, I'm mad at you. I hate you. I don't want to listen to you. I'm over this. Right. And so when you learn to self-regulate, you can actually send the message that you're meaning to send without it getting lost in the delivery of dysregulated expression.
Yeah, and it goes back to your self-awareness side. It makes a lot of sense. It's intention versus impact. The tone of your voice, maybe you don't feel like you're yelling. Maybe this doesn't seem like yelling to you. Maybe this is the tone of voice you're comfortable with, but your partner doesn't translate it that way, and therefore we have to understand that. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones because there are 6 letters in strong. So let's unpack these. The next one is trust. So after we have safety, that makes sense that we now have the ability to have trust. What do we need to know about trust when it comes to relationships?
So what I like to talk about trust is, first of all, you can't trust somebody you don't feel safe with, right? So we got safety out of the way. And then we can talk about building trust, which is about trusting in a bond. And the bond is built over multiple repeat interactions, right? It's consistency that builds bond. And I'm doing this because I like to think of it as a bridge, like a suspension bridge, that every trustworthy act is one more thread across this bridge. And the two people in the relationship have the capacity to give each other opportunities to build trust, take those opportunities, and send that rope back. And then give your partner the opportunity to earn your trust. And that's really what builds trust in a relationship. And, when you talk about attachment styles, there are many people who grew up maybe where they didn't have that person that they were able to learn to build trust with, right? It's like if you never grew up with somebody that you can toss a ball with, maybe you don't know that that's a thing, right? And so that's part of, trust building in relationship is it's not going to happen overnight. But it is something that if you stick with it, if you stay consistent, you can really build a strong bond of trust between the two of you that you can then also repair if it gets ruptured.
That makes sense. It reminds me of when we think about neural pathways as well. I've heard when we're trying to form new neural pathways, I've heard it described as walking in tall grass, right? And as you walk in tall grass more and more, the pathway becomes more defined, but it only comes through repetition. But the bridge analogy really works too, because you think about sending a line back. You think about how also small things can break that trust and break that connection. It's not trust takes a while to build up, but it can also be damaged in an instant. Is that right?
Absolutely. And also the reason I like the bridge analogy is you have to have 2 points. Like one person by themselves cannot build that bridge. And I talk about it in my book as the difference between gifting someone belief, right? Like, I believe you, I'll build my side of the bridge and it'll get to your side. It's like, that's not how a sturdy bridge works. You need a partner to send it back. You need someone who's willing to build that trust with you rather than just relying on, oh no, I just believe you. It's a gift I give you when I decide I love you. I believe you is, that's not enough to actually have a trusting bond between two people.
That makes sense. We'll stick with the bridge analogy. I like that one better now. That works. Next is the hot button word, respect. So when you think about respect, why did you choose that word and how does that play into relational dynamics?
So I think this is a really, really interesting distinction. And I did not come up with this, but it is something that resonates with me and that I've used in my work. Is there's a difference between respect for authority and respect for autonomy. And this is something that I think maybe gets conflated a little bit, even with the different ways that different maybe genders traditionally use the word respect. Is, are you asking for respect for your autonomy, or are you asking for respect for your authority? And if somebody, for example, if you as a husband are like, I want to be the authority in this relationship, that's what respect feels like to me. Well, does your partner know that? Is that what she's signing up for? Or are you signing up to be in a constant conflict because she's like, you're not the boss of me. What are you doing? I have autonomy. I need you to respect my autonomy, right? And what I talk about in this context of a healthy relationship is we both have authority over ourselves and autonomy in the relationship. So respect internally, we both have self-respect, and then we have mutual respect. And that's where it's slightly different. Is nobody has the authority over anybody else, but we always have authority over ourselves, which is then respecting each of our autonomy and also respecting what we've decided to create together in the relationship.
Can you give some examples of respecting someone's autonomy?
Yeah. So, for example, boundaries, right? Great word. And I'd break it down in the book of like, boundaries are not rules. They are not needs. They are simply what you have control of and what you ask other people to respect, right? This is a boundary I have, but it's not something that you can actually do to anyone else. So again, this is a kind of a complicated concept. And in the book, I use a very specific example, but the difference between commanding respect or demanding respect. Like when you have self-respect and you are conducting yourself with integrity, you don't stay in situations that are not for you. You don't try to dominate the situation and make it better for you. You know that you have the autonomy to leave. And that's like, I can look at myself and my actions and feel that I am acting with integrity. And I also respect other people's boundaries. And together we can figure out like how we can have a healthy relationship where I get my needs met and you get your needs met, but neither of us are getting our needs met at the expense of each other.
So a boundary in this context is that it doesn't require the other person to do anything. You're not asking the other person to do anything. You're communicating a line. You're saying, hey, this is the case. If X happens, this is what I'm going to do because this is within my control. And respect has to do with understanding that autonomy with that individual and letting them have that space. Is that kind of where we're going with that?
Yeah.
It is a tricky concept to understand.
It is. And it is something that I really love working with self-respect because it really goes back down to values, right? Is when you can look at your own actions in your relationship. And I think this is so important, what I've seen with a lot of men. Sometimes in relationships, when I ask like, well, when you look at your behavior in the relationship, do you see yourself as acting with self-respect? And there are times where, that's also where there's a lot of work of, oh no, here's where I compromised my values. Here's where I held resentment because I pushed myself to, give when I really didn't have it in me. Or here's where I failed to say no to something. And again, that's where it's like, okay, so you maybe didn't hold your self-respect with enough boundary. So then it reflected negatively on the relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I want to make sure that we hit up the rest of these. Next, we have openness. Mm-hmm. When we say openness in a relationship, why is this one of the pillars of the strong framework?
Openness is about obviously open communication, but also accepting that your partner is going to change throughout their life, that we're not fixed individuals. We are constantly changing, and being able to incorporate that into your relationship and have collaborative conversations about what each of your needs are in this new chapter, and being able to be open about that creates a very healthy dynamic for not growing apart, but instead continuing to grow together.
I absolutely 100% agree with that. As somebody who's been married going on 14 years, the person that I married when I was 21 is not the same person who I'm married to now. And that's okay. We should change. If we're growing human beings who are interacting with the world, we are going to change. Our physical cells are supposed to change every 7 years at least. And so we are different people, but committing to change together and being able to say, oh, like, this is what you're thinking now. This is how you're growing now. And being able to say, how do I love this person today as well as in the future is really a powerful thing, because I think a lot of people get hung up on, well, when we first got married, it was like this, or they get stuck in this golden age of nostalgia when they remember a particular trait of a person. And that thing is limited by the fact that we can't have this person be the same person forever. And if they were, that would also be a problem. So I 100% agree. It's a really wonderful way to say that.
Yeah. And I think, again, even when you talk about mental health, having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And so this is, again, with just embracing the growth that comes with being a healthy individual and having a healthy partnership.
Right. So having openness to growth and change is a key part of having a healthy relationship. That makes sense. So just to recap, S is safety, T is trust, R is respect, O is openness, N is nurturing. And I could see how some people think about the typical masculine associations with nurturing. Those things don't usually go hand in hand. We think about nurturing, we think about mothers nurturing their child, but nurturing, to your point, is something that both sides can take part of and is essential. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, this was one of I think it was my favorite chapter to write, because there's so much research about the importance of nurturing relationships. So the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life. We all know this, but what does it mean to have the skills to nurture a relationship? Because like you said, sometimes there's this image that nurturing is this thing that women have innately that happens for a small child. But what about after that? Like, what does it mean to nurture your middle school child? What does it mean to nurture a relationship with your high school age child? What does it mean to nurture a relationship with your adult children or with your friends, with your community? These are skills that need to be cultivated. And nurturing those relationships, continuing to pay attention to what each of these relationships need, is really crucial to long-term relational success, right? And this is something that, unfortunately, a lot of men are not taught or told that they need the skills for. And so, unfortunately, this is something that has been borne out by a lot of research, is that, after the kids leave home, sometimes they don't really have a lot of contact if they haven't established a strong nurturing relationship. That, hey, I do call dad for emotional support, or dad is interested in my day-to-day life. Instead, it just routes through mom. All right. So mom's the one checking in on the kids, even after they leave home and become adults and have their own families. And the dad is kind of like, there, but not really present, which is a real shame, because then this is where a lot of older men, let's say they go through a divorce or they lose a spouse, they end up very lonely if they don't have their own relationships with their communities, with their children, with other people, other friends.
And then how does that nurturing take place between two people within a relationship?
Ooh, that's where I talk about the difference between function-based relationships and connection-based relationships. So not just relying on the external circumstances to keep your relationship strong, right? It's not just, all right, well, we live together, we see each other every day, we're going on our 15-year anniversary, of course we have a good relationship. It's like, no, if you're not taking care of it, if you're not keeping it alive, if you're not tending to it, if you're not nurturing it, it's probably not doing that well. right? And so really nurturing the emotional connection between you and your spouse, keeping that as a priority, no matter if you have kids or not just relying on external factors to keep the internal workings of your relationship healthy and strong.
I've heard it said that romance is thinking about somebody when they're not there. If you think about romantic gestures, romantic words, like it is showing forethought, it is doing things, making things happen that are taking place when the person is not physically present. It's one thing to be in front of your partner and look them in the eyes and say, I love you. And it's another thing to think about their day and to prepare them breakfast when the person's not there, or to check in with them and call them in the middle of the day because you want to know how a certain key event in their day went and make sure they're okay. That is romance. And that happens within romantic relationships, but also it's kind of how to be a good friend, right? Like that also plays a part in being a good parent or being a good son or daughter. It is thinking about the person when they're not physically present.
And actually that kind of brings us to the next piece, which is the G, which is, having that generous mindset is what I think as kind of the magic fairy dust of any relationship, right? If you're out in the world and you have this generous mindset, that's when you're like, oh, my partner would appreciate that. I'll get it for them. Even though it might take me 5 minutes to go stop and get that thing, I'm acting with that generosity that I'm not saying, well, no, my needs are more important. Like I need to go get to my next thing. I have some generosity that I can think of my partner's needs or wants or my kids' needs or wants. And that really is what makes the relationship, just like you said, feel a little extra special.
It reminds me of the things like saw this and thought of you. You see a TikTok, you think your partner will laugh at it, you send it to them. You're at the grocery store, you pass their favorite kombucha. I'm in California, so of course it's kombucha.
Yeah.
And then you get it for them, or a chocolate croissant, or you pass an event for an upcoming show and you wonder, hey, would my person like to go to this? Could we do this together? That is thinking about them when they're not there. And it doesn't have to be in one way, shape, or form of just a gift or just a physical thing, but it's any way that you can show this person that you're thinking about them. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think the reason why I call it generosity is because there's technically nothing wrong with not doing that, right? It's like there's no rule that says you have to think of your partner's favorite drink. You have to send an event that you saw on Instagram that you think they might like. If you don't do that, you're not a jerk, right? But if you do that, if you do have that little extra generosity mindset, it does bring that little extra magic into any relationship, right? And that's really, I think, often the challenge of any relationship. Humans are pretty coded for survival, right? And so having the things that are absolute necessities are usually top of mind, but having that little bit of like, no, I have the luxury of spending 4.5 seconds to send this little text to my partner. I do have the luxury of taking a breath and, snapping a photo of a flower that I see and be like, oh my God, look, here, thought of you, right? And that I think also helps all of us if we're talking about mental health, just slow down, be a little bit more mindful, be a little bit more present in our lives. But it's kind of that, it is more of a generous stance of like abundance rather than scarcity.
Yeah. So I think anybody who's in a relationship who is feeling like the spark is gone, there's something missing, there's miscommunication between the two, you're growing apart, things aren't the way they used to be. I think anybody who's in that situation is going to get immense benefit from taking your book, going through these different parts, analyzing and being self-aware in their own right and saying, okay, where can I improve? How can I grow? Because all of us in some way, shape, or form, no matter how long we've been with our partner, no matter where we're at in our relationship stage, can benefit from having the words to be able to communicate these things and the understanding to be able to apply them. I thoroughly recommend Kristal DeSantis's book, Strong. Can you remind us the name of the book one more time?
It's called Strong, a Relationship Field Guide for the Modern Man. And again, I'm a therapist, but I understand therapy is not accessible to everybody. And so that's part of where I really wanted to write this book with some practical, applicable skills and tools that, like you said, if you notice that your relationship isn't feeling as fulfilling as it could be, or maybe you're just somebody who's self-motivated and you want the best relationship you possibly can have, this is another resource that you can look at and apply some skills from into your real life relationships.
And listeners, watchers, you're going to find links to her book in the show notes and the description box. Where else can people go to learn more about you and all the awesome work that you're doing, Kristal?
My website is strong.love, and on Instagram, I am ATX Therapist because I'm in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I know that this episode is going to help a lot of people. Thank you so much, Kristal DeSantis, for joining us. And listen, y'all, this whole relationship challenge thing, these communication errors between two people, they are real, but they are much more common than you think. And with the help of books like Strong, it's definitely treatable. We will see you on the next episode. This episode of Treatable was edited by Daniel Lopez. The intro and explanatory sections of the episode were written by Alexandra Kruger. The theme song was created by Sebastian Gonzalez, and the cover art for this episode is created by Joel Daniel. If you got any value from this episode, it would personally mean the world to me if you would leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps to spread mental health awareness to more folks, and I read each and every comment that people leave. So tell us what you appreciate about the podcast, and you just might hear us feature it on the next episode. All of my love, and we'll see you on the next one.